The future of electric vehicles
is filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Hype stories.
Fisker officially filing for bankruptcy.
The industry is currently seeing some warning signs.
EV companies keep going bankrupt. Fisker, Lordstown, Faraday, Aptera, companies that have gotten millions, even billions of dollars in investment to produce the next Tesla and have worked with the government to bring us an electric future, all have failed, one after another, taking those billions of dollars to the grave with them. So it begs the question, are EV companies doomed to fail? Well, the only way to really find out is to figure out why so many of these companies crashed and burned in the first place. And when I say so many, it really is a lot of them. It seems like every 2 weeks, some schmuck with a couple $1,000,000 in Silicon Valley money is heralded as the next Elon Musk.
I don't really have a business plan.
And I can't really blame people for getting excited. EVs are the absolute hotness. They're the meta of cars and tech today. Hell, up until last month even, Apple was apparently working on an electric car, which I can only imagine would have cost twice as much as every other EV and only able to be charged upside down. But here's the thing, the electric car craze isn't necessarily a modern phenomenon. EVs go back much longer than you think, back to the 1830s, and back then, they pretty much all failed too. Before even Carl Benz built that very first gasoline-powered car, electricity was considered the up-and-coming way to propel your wagon. And to give you some context, the other options were steam engines or a horse. But back then, electric motors weren't efficient, and perhaps more worryingly, batteries weren't rechargeable. So EVs kind of ended up being a parlor trick, a gag to show your friends that you could make your carriage move without a horse. Fundamentally, the technology wasn't in a place where people found it practical, something to keep in mind as we move into the future. Battery and motor tech improved slowly over the next couple hundred years, but it turned out making gasoline go boom was much easier and much more efficient. So explode dead dinosaurs we did, and EVs basically died. Until, well, now. More specifically, until 2008, when a little company called Tesla started mass producing a hot-rodded Lotus called the Tesla Roadster. Little high schooler Guff was in love with that car, by the way, and I was a EV believer long before most people were. I even wanted to work for Tesla, which didn't work out very well for me. And from there, EVs only became more and more mainstream. Now you can't turn on the news without hearing something about EVs. Hell, I'm constantly getting 2-hour-long EV range test videos in my YouTube homepage, and I daily drive a rotary. But it seems like that news is changing. And no longer are we talking about never-ending stock growth or optimistic government mandates. Now we're talking about failure, plummeting share prices, missed sales targets, bankruptcy. Dozens of EV and EV-related companies are crashing and burning, but when you ask the industry experts why, they'll give you a dozen different answers. Like this industry expert here. Sir, can you explain to me why EV companies are failing?
Huh? What?
Sir, what could you be doing that is more important than the fate of electric vehicles?
I'm playing the new Asphalt Legends Unite.
Oh, snap! There's a new Asphalt game?
Yeah, it just came out for mobile and consoles, and all my progress carried over from Asphalt 9, so I didn't even miss a beat.
Can I drive an EV in the game?
There are over 250 hypercars unlocked, and a new garage so you can show them off as you collect them. Like the remastered Navara, since you're so obsessed with electric cars.
That's the fastest electric car in the world, okay? I don't appreciate the slant.
Why don't you use your own phone? There's new co-op mode so we can at least play together in multiplayer.
My phone sucks.
Use your PS5 or Xbox then. It's crossplay.
Have you seen my car? I can't afford a PS5. Damn, these graphics are crazy though.
Yeah, it's a brand new lighting system. Check out the Singapore track with an octopus and a roller coaster.
This is insane for a mobile game.
Yeah, and it's free to play too.
Okay, fine. I'll download it myself.
Since it's brand new, there are a ton of rewards if you download and start playing now. You just gotta scan the QR code or hit the link in the description. Hey!
What?
Don't you have to tell them about EVs or something?
Oh yeah. Sorry about that. Now, the big companies, Tesla, Rivian, Lucid, or any of the legacy car makers, spend billions and billions of dollars on EV research trying to make it work better. and to make it appealing to consumers. And almost all of them promise that electricity is the only sustainable future for cars. The work they're doing is going to help the planet, and you driving an EV, well, that's just inevitable. Well, all companies besides one, but we'll get to them later. But of course they say that they have incentive, like $623 billion kind of incentive. That's the 2024 projected revenue for EVs globally, which by some predictions is on pace to become a $1 trillion industry by 2028. But even with all of those dollars, it turns out building a car company is pretty dang hard. Like, for example, remember Faraday Future? If you don't, I don't blame you. So here's a little refresher. Back in 2015, they were the super hot EV startup that hired people from Apple, Tesla, SpaceX. They were so promising that articles even speculated that they were owned by Apple. And they were going to build luxury EVs that rivaled the best of the best, all while being faster than Tesla on the drag strip. And those promises led to some serious investment, even with a couple of huge red flags. At first, it was leadership concerns that eventually led to a couple of CEO changes, but despite that, within just a few years, Faraday Future was getting stupid money from investors. $1.5 billion here, another $550 million injection there, and despite all of that money, Faraday kept saying they needed more in order to deliver this super EV by the end of 2018. But even though boatloads of money were coming in, spaceship loads of money were being burned through. Spaceships bigger than boats? I don't know. You know what I mean. And can you guess how it all ended? They didn't release their amazing EV in 2018, and they filed for bankruptcy in 2019. In 2021, as a last-ditch effort to revive the brand, they tried to go public via a merger with a company called Property Solutions Acquisitions Corp, and once again had a promising plan. Geely, the Chinese car brand, would invest into Faraday and help with the manufacturing in China. And then they struck a deal with Foxconn, the people who make your iPhone, to help with strategy to make sure that everything went to plan this time. And then it happened. Faraday Future went public, and it seemed like this little EV company that could was finally getting its act together. Yeah, no. By January of the next year, members of Faraday Future were getting subpoenaed by the SEC. Turns out they were being investigated for misleading investors, and from there, the company basically faded away. And as for that car that they promised in 2018, well, it did get released in 2023, and by released, I mean 4 were sold and like 6 were leased, and they cost $309,000 each. And well, if their stock price is any indication as to their success, it's down 99.98%. But okay, that's just one example, you might say. Sure. Let's talk about another little EV startup based out of Lordstown, Ohio, Lordstown Motors. They were founded in 2018, and their great idea was to build an electric pickup truck and to do it fast so they could beat everyone else to market. Let me know if this business plan sounds familiar. Promises of a world-beating electric car, massive initial investments, a reverse merger with a SPAC company to go public on the NASDAQ, a promise to deliver cars in 2020, that never happened. It was all eerily similar to Faraday Future, down to even the fact that the SEC had to get involved. You see, the SEC said that Lordstown exaggerated its demand for its EV pickup truck. Lordstown said that they had over 100,000 non-binding pre-orders, mostly from commercial fleet companies, but the SEC's investigation found that those companies that pre-ordered the trucks weren't fleet companies or even intended to purchase the trucks for use. It was all supposedly a big scam to fool investors. Oh, and the timeline to build the truck, yeah, the SEC said that was a lie too. And in 2023, they filed for, say it with me, bankruptcy. A word that you guys better get used to hearing in this video. But okay, that's just 2 companies. 2 multi-billion-dollar invested public companies, but still just 2 companies. So let's make it 3 with a company that you may have read about in the old newspaper recently, Fisker. But we start with not the current Fisker, but the first Fisker, Fisker Automotive, which was founded by Henrik Fisker in 2007. The same Henrik Fisker who designed the Aston Martin DB9 and the BMW Z8. And with this new venture, he was off to the races immediately, raising $528 million from the US government and another billion in private investor funding. Because, well, he was building the future. He was building an EV. Well, sort of. It was a range-extended EV, which is essentially a hybrid, using a 2-liter turbo engine from GM, but instead of powering the wheels with the gas engine, it was only used to charge the battery, which then propelled the 2 electric motors. It was a unique design, and unlike other EV companies, he actually did have a car to deliver. The Fisker Karma. It took a few manufacturing hiccups and delays, but it hit the streets in 2011 and immediately flopped. For a sporty looking car, it wasn't sporty. 0 to 60 took 6.3 seconds, not exactly the numbers you'd expect from a car advertising 900 pound-feet of torque. And then there were the numerous software issues that constantly plagued owners. But making a crappy car wasn't the thing that actually killed Fisker. There are plenty of crappy cars on the market selling just fine. Just walk into a Nissan dealership. The issue were the batteries. You see, Fisker had one lone battery supplier, A123 Systems. And A123 found out that there was a problem with one of the manufacturing plants making the batteries. A problem that meant basically every battery leaving that plant was underperforming and had horrible durability. So a recall was issued for any Fisker Karma that was affected by that one manufacturing plant. Now, it didn't seem like such a big deal for Fisker, just fix the cars and move on, but for A123, it was catastrophic. That recall cost them so much money that just a year or so later, A123 went bankrupt, and Fisker lost its sole battery supplier. This put them in a bit of hot water, to say the least, but at least they had all those taxpayer dollars from the US government, right? Well, less than half of that $528 million had actually been paid out to Fisker because that money was contingent on Fisker meeting deadlines and paying off certain debts, which they didn't. And to top it all off, they had managed to only sell 2,450 Fisker Karmas. To put that into perspective, the average cost with all of the research and operating expenses to produce one Fisker Karma ended up around $600,000, and they sold them for $100K each, which is clearly a bad deal. Unlike Albon merch, like our Plus Me and Chill t-shirt, 100% cotton, hand-drawn design, made and shipped by yours truly. You can grab one at the link in the description. So, needless to say, the company stopped all production in 2012. Henrik Fisker resigned from the company due to disagreements with the executive board, and then, in 2013, they filed for the Big B, bankruptcy. But it turns out, Henrik Fisker was not content with failing just one time, because in 2016, he launched the current Fisker Inc., not to be confused with the previous Fisker Automotive. And this time, it would be a proper EV company, no hybrid malarkey. Now, tell me if you've heard this plan before. He created a vision for a world-beating EV, this time the Fisker Ocean. He sold that vision to investors who paid him mad skrilla, and then Fisker got acquired through a SPAC deal so they could go public. And this highly original plan seemed to be going well as recently as this year. The Fisker Ocean was finally released as a 2024 model, and well, it didn't get horrible reviews. Well, actually, MKBHD called it the worst car I've ever reviewed. Road and Track said the 2024 Fisker Ocean isn't ready. But, you know what, the sticks and stones or something like that, right?
EV startup Fisker officially filing for bankruptcy in a Delaware federal court.
Aw, man. I totally didn't see that coming. Fisker filed for bankruptcy just last month in June, and well, if you bought a Fisker Ocean, you probably have a lot of questions. Like, will Fisker honor their warranty? Will they supply parts for you? Can I even get the car serviced? Will insurance cover Fiskers? Will my damn phone app work for as long as I have the car? I don't know. Don't ask me. You're the one who decided to drop $50K on a car from a startup. And that's just the thing. These companies, they're just startups. Just like all those other Y Combinator, Silicon Valley, Pied Piper venture capital tech companies that die off by the dozens. All of these companies might be car companies, but they're structured and treated like tech companies. Billions of dollars of investment from venture firms wanting to fund some charming personality with pie-in-the-sky claims on the off chance that he'll be the next Elon. But the reality is, building a car company, is hard, it's slow, it requires far more time, effort, and constant innovation than an app or a gadget, all in a cutthroat market saturated with players that have existed for over 100 years in many cases. And despite government subsidies and mandates that say we'll be full EV in 5, 10, or 15 years, the reality is the market is showing otherwise. In today's economy, people struggle to afford groceries, let alone afford an electric car, which on average transacts for over $55,000 US. And insurance on EVs is typically around 20% more expensive than a similar gas car, and at least in much of the US, a huge number of people live in multi-family housing, apartment complexes and such, with no access to EV charging and often don't have many accessible EV charging stations nearby, myself included. And all of that has led to an EV sales slowdown, with very little signs of letting up as people are holding on to their old cars for longer than ever before. So it makes perfect sense why EV companies are failing, and not just these high-profile ones too. Aptera wanted to build an electric three-wheeler all the way back in 2006. They went out of business in 2011. Maybe they were a little early, but Coda Automotive raised $320 million in 2009 for their EV sedan that looked like a 20-year-old Civic. They burned through all their cash by 2013. But okay, I hear you. It's a lot of negativity here. You're probably telling me, Guff, they didn't all fail. Also, where's the Mini Cooper build? You shut your damn mouth about the Mini Cooper. And let me address the first half of that. Because you're right, it wasn't all doom and gloom. Mostly. Companies like Rivian and Lucid are making some dope cars that you'll actually see on the road. But what you don't see is the pile of money being burned in the background. Take Rivian, for example, who spent $12 billion building and selling cars while only generating about $7 billion in sales. They've recently just reported a Q1 net loss of $1.5 billion. Lucid, on the other hand, is doing swimmingly, having just reported a Q1 loss of only $685 million, which, to be honest, is less than last year, even though their stock price continues to plummet. You see, both Rivian and Lucid seem to be burning money just to stay afloat, and maybe that's just the name of the game. The way many businesses work these days is, as long as they're growing, they'll eventually turn a profit, right? Well, at this rate, analysts put Lucid on pace to make their first profit in 2030 if they can keep the doors open and keep investors calm for that long. And that's just it. Companies these days are designed to be constantly juiced by investors in the hopes of keeping their stock prices afloat despite all the money being spent. And unless something miraculous happens, excellent cars like the R1T and Lucid Air Sapphire might go the way of the ocean. Turns out, however, Rivian just managed themselves a miracle. Volkswagen announced that they're investing $5 billion into the company. And that's because Volkswagen realized that spending all that money on their own EV development was pointless, because they could just pay Rivian and get it done for less. And well, Rivian benefits by staying alive. It's a win-win. Now, all that being said, there is one company that I conveniently left out, and no doubt many of you have been yelling at your television/phone/computer this entire time. A company that is not only staying afloat, they're thriving. Tesla. For all the billions that Rivian has lost, Tesla made $1 billion in profit in just Q1 of this year. And that's low for them. The same time last year, they were doing over $2 billion. But here's the thing, are they the rule or the exception? Tesla is a hugely successful EV company. I will absolutely give them that, but what they aren't anymore is a startup. They were when they were one of the first to market with a usable EV, and they used that momentum to work their way up into becoming essentially another legacy automaker. One that actually sees a profit, a big one at that, living alongside the likes of GM or Ford or Toyota. And then there's China. If you live in the US, you've probably never heard of the Chinese brands, but brands like BYD are growing at a massive rate in Asia and Europe. In Q4 of 2023, BYD was the first EV company to surpass Tesla as the #1 top-selling electric car manufacturer. And with China practically owning the battery mining, refining, and production business, it's expected that we'll see over 100 new Chinese EV companies emerge in 2024. Whether or not they'll see the same fate as the EV startups that we've seen in the West is a question that I can't answer, but with America imposing 102% tariffs on Chinese EVs, they certainly have their work cut out for them. So then, the EV market is a bit of a roller coaster. If it's not companies crashing and burning, it's the average person not being able to afford them or not being able to charge them, no matter how good the cars are themselves. And there's the question of if the US power grid is even capable of handling EVs, which I certainly can't answer because I live in Texas. And as much as I enjoyed standing up every morning in class and saying, "Honor the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible," for the entire 12 years that I was in public school, I can tell you, as a Texan, that not all power grids are created equal. So when inclement weather hits during hurricane season or a tornado blows through and there's no electricity for 3, 4, 5 days, a week, in a 100-mile radius, what am I supposed to do? Of course, all of these issues are well known and well documented. There are numerous government initiatives, strategic changes, and investments in grid technology happening as we speak in order to prepare the country for the eventual EV takeover. But depending on who you ask, some people might say that the future isn't electric, at least not fully electric. Former CEO and current chairman of Toyota, Akio Toyoda, says that fully electric vehicles will never account for over 30% of the market. Now, before you start yelling, it's not that he's saying to stick to internal combustion cars either. From his perspective, the enemy is carbon emissions, but instead of a singular focus on EVs, Akio Toyoda proposed a multiple pathway approach for the future of cars. Customers should be the ones who choose what path they want to take, not regulations or politics. And it's the job of the car manufacturer to be prepared for whatever the customer's preference is, not to force their hand. It's a consumer-centric approach, which is refreshing in a market that seems to live on the push and pull of government mandate. And if you look at Toyota's business model today, they are clearly tremendously bullish on hybrids, with nearly every car in their lineup having some type of hybrid option. They believe hybrids are the perfect segue between ICE and EV as the world continues to fight the geographic and economic hurdles that come with a full EV adoption. And the market is certainly receptive to it, with many of Toyota's hybrid cars continuing to sell out, even in a market that is slowing down overall. And to be honest, I ain't mad because hybrids have historically been pretty cool. The Holy Trinity, the P1, LaFerrari, and 918, those are all hybrid. Corvette E-Ray, Lamborghini Revuelto, Acura NSX, McLaren Artura, the new 911 GTS, and it's not just supercars, obviously. The Prius Prime, Honda CR-V, Grand Highlander, CX-90, RAV4 Prime, and so on have people getting into fistfights at dealerships just to have the opportunity to buy one. The same certainly can't be said for cars like the Ioniq 5 and 6 or the Mercedes EQ series, which are actually pretty solid cars, especially the Hyundais, but they continue to sit unsold at dealer lots despite heavy discounts. And with hybrids eating the lunch of EVs across the board, the words of Akio Toyoda have gone from EV FUD to automotive prophecy over the last year. So then, going back to the original question, do I think EV companies are doomed to fail? No, of course not, but it's not necessarily. EVs are the future. It's undeniable for anyone who's taken the time to understand the car market, but maybe it's a further future than we originally thought. People aren't so willing to give their hard-earned money to companies that might not exist in a few years, or for a product that isn't totally practical for them, despite tremendous promises or government mandates. And because of that, the pressure is on for EV companies like Rivian or Lucid to either find a way to bring us the future or survive long enough for us to get there ourselves. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. If you got an opinion about EVs, be sure to let me know by joining the Albon Discord in the link in the description. I'll see you guys in the next one.